How you all doing? So, let's throw that first slide up. We can. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I'm really excited to be back here with all of you. It's always for me. There's a big build-up at the beginning of the school year. A lot of work to get ready for this, and then I get to be in the space with everybody else, and it makes it all worth it and very cool. So good to see a lot of you again, people who are back from last year. Do we have any of the folks who were abroad last semester? Or our abroad people didn't come back? Where are they? We need to go get those people. I'm really happy to see you guys again. And all of you who are new, looking forward to meeting you. My name is Chris Harry. My wife Lorraine and I are both Pomona College alumni, and we're CCF staff here. I'd love to meet you and get to know you a little bit. One of my favorite things to do during the year is to meet one-on-one with students. I'll take you to coffee, boba, tea, whatever you want. Talk about whatever you want. Just hear about your life. Talk about whatever questions or thoughts you have, and we can get to know each other. But here we are at the beginning of another new season. And maybe like me, you came in excited, apprehensive, a mix of both those things. It's always very interesting, like coming into a new season, a new place. For those of you who are first years, I remember being a first year at Pomona and coming in all the way up until the day before we left, realizing that I could not imagine what my life was going to look like in a couple of days. Like literally no conception. What will it look like to go through my day? I just can't picture it at all. It was just this unknowable thing that was exciting and scary and everything all at once. A few years ago, actually a couple of times, we've had the fortune to go to Kauai, the island in Hawaii. And we went once with Lorraine's parents, and we wanted to show them Waimea Canyon. We've been to Waimea Canyon before. It's this amazing canyon. It's, is this going to work? Okay, they call it the Grand Canyon of the Pacific. It's 10 miles long, 3,000 feet deep, stunning view. And we were excited to take Lorraine's parents there. We knew that they would appreciate it. And so we took the drive out there. We got to the spot, only when we got there, we did not see this. This is from another trip. We saw this. This is not a picture I took. I found this one on the web. Apparently this happens often enough that people have pictures of it. We got there, and basically the clouds were all around us, and you couldn't see a thing. It was actually worse than that. That looks kind of permeable. When I remember standing before this, it looked like just a white wall. Like you could walk to the edge of the cliff, and then it was just, it's like God forgot to continue reality past that point. Just this thing, like, watch out for what's in there. That's a Stephen King area where monsters live or something like that. It's just this veil. It was kind of a bummer. We hopped in the car, we drove to the next lookout point, the next one. Couldn't get around it. Everywhere we went, that's all we could see. We had to tell Lorraine's parents, trust us, it's really cool. We'll show you pictures. This is what it can feel like coming into a new season. Sometimes you want to look ahead and you just can't perceive what's in front of you. Sometimes it's very anxiety-provoking. About this time my senior year of college, I came into school with no plan for what I was going to do after I graduated. And I worked on it that year, but by the end of winter break, I still had no plan for what I was going to do after I graduated. And I came back onto campus second semester with this growing fear. What is my life going to look like? What is going to happen after I graduate? No idea. On the flip side, sometimes it can be this incredibly exciting thing. When Lorraine and I were going to get married, we spent 5 months planning this wedding. Well, really, Lorraine planned. If you know Lorraine planned most of the wedding. I just did what she told me to do. Planned this wedding, and I could picture the wedding because we were planning it, and I was super excited for the day. But even up to the day till, I couldn't imagine what my life was going to look like the day after as a married person. A lot like being a first year in college. And in fact, the same thing happened to me again when Lorraine was pregnant with our daughter. And again, what's it going to be like to be a dad? I see this baby growing, but I can't imagine what it's going to be like when we bring this baby home from the hospital. Sometimes new seasons are just unknowable. But most of the time, there's at least something unknowable in every season. There's some newness, some sense of like, I don't know where this is going. We are all on the threshold of a new season with hopes and concerns. What is something new this season that excites you? And what is something that has you worried or concerned? Turn in your tables or where the chairs are, if you can group up a little bit in threes or something, share with the people right around you off of these questions. I think that coming into new seasons, dealing with newness, this is like a constant feature of our lives. We're always moving from the familiar into the unknown. So it matters how we handle it. It matters because it's how we experience life. It's how we grow. It's experiencing new things that shape and challenge us. Most people do not associate the idea of newness with the Bible. It is an old, old book. If I went on the streets asking, give me an adjective to describe the Bible, not many people are going to say new, right? The book is 1,700 years old in its current form. Some of the texts in the Bible are 1,000 or more years older than that. It's often used as a tool not to celebrate newness, but to oppose newness and to oppose change. It's treated as a storehouse of tradition frequently. But when you read the Bible, you see constant invitations and challenges into the new and into change. It actually has a lot to say about how to embrace and enter change. The story of God's people begins in Genesis 12 with God telling Abraham to leave all he knows. God says, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. Leave everything you know. Leave everything that's familiar. Embrace radical change. And I'm going to use that process to create a new people." Later on, God's people would go through another massive disruption. In 587 BCE, Judah was conquered by Babylon and taken into captivity in Babylon. Many of the people in the land were taken into captivity. And a lot of the scripture in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Bible, is written specifically in that moment, or those scriptures were collected in that moment when people are living in captivity, mourning the loss of their land. That's why, by the way, if you're ever wondering, in like the Hebrew Bible, why there's so many passages about judgment and this kind of thing, a lot of it is because they've lost their homeland and they're in this place, and they're reflecting on, how did this happen? Why did this happen to us? And so there's a lot of reflection on how this happened, and then a lot of reflection also on God speaking words of hope to them. This isn't the end. Embrace this new situation that you're in. I am with you. And this is not going to last either. We're moving into something new. Jesus, of course, is always calling people to receive new things from God, to enter the newness and change that God is bringing. And we get this powerful example early in the Gospel of Mark. It reads like this. "Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, and people came and said to him, 'Why do John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?'" It's a good question. Fasting was a thing that was commanded by God. The people were supposed to fast on the Day of Atonement. But beyond that, it was a very regular part of ancient spiritual practice. And today, like lots of religious traditions practice fasting. It's a very valuable spiritual exercise. At the time of Jesus' life, a lot of people practiced fasting once or twice a week as part of their devotion to God and a way of drawing close to God. So it was a reasonable question to ask Jesus. Everyone else, including the guy who baptized you, they're all fasting. Why don't you fast? Why don't your disciples fast? Why didn't he fast? There's a long tradition of giving very bad answers to these questions, especially among Protestants, which is my own tradition, of saying, well, it's because it's a legalistic thing and Jesus would break, and that's not at all what's happening here. In fact, there's a whole history of anti-Semitism around that approach to interpreting theology. That's not what Jesus is about. He's got nothing bad to say about fasting. Here's what he actually says. Jesus said to them, "The wedding attendants cannot fast while the bridegroom is with them, can they? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and they will fast on that day." So Jesus is saying, it's not that fasting is wrong or useless. That's not why we're not doing it. The reason my disciples aren't fasting is because it's not appropriate to the moment. And what is the moment? The moment is that the wedding feast has begun. They're sitting with the groom, and you don't fast when you're at the wedding feast. That would be rude. That would be inappropriate. When you're sitting with the groom at the wedding feast, you celebrate. You eat the food. You have joy and experience that. And it's not a time for mourning and deep self-reflection, right? It's a time for joy. Something about Jesus coming and the kingdom of God that he's announcing, Jesus' presence with them, is the inauguration of this special moment. And he's saying, this isn't the time. Something new is happening. And then he goes on and says this, which is the part I really want to focus on tonight. He says, "No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak. Otherwise, the patch pulls away from it, the new from the old, and a worse tear is made. Similarly, no one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is lost, and so are the skins. But one puts new wine into fresh wineskins." So after having explained something new is happening, that's why we're not fasting, he goes and tells two parables. And the first parable is probably going to work better for us today because we have some concept of this. He's talking about sewing a patch. Now, not many of us sew anymore, but sewing a patch on some torn clothing. And if you're going to sew a patch on torn clothing, you better use an old cloth patch, right? Because if you take a new cloth and you sew it on an old torn cloak, what's going to happen when you wash that thing? The new cloth, with new clothes sometimes shrink, right, when you wash them. The new patch will shrink, and the cloak won't, and the patch will rip away from the cloak, and you'll have a worse tear there. You can't put this new thing on the old thing. New cloth on new cloth, old cloth on old cloth. And then he goes on and talks about wineskins. Now, not many of us have experience. Some of us have some experience with wine. Not many of us have experience with wineskins. Back in this day, when they were storing wine, they would put it in animal skins, in wineskin vessels, or sometimes in jars. But the benefit of putting it in a wineskin pouch or vessel is that as the wine ferments, what does fermentation produce? Gas. What kind of gas? It's carbon dioxide, right? Am I wrong about that? I think, okay. Some people should know about that, some science people. All right, so the fermentation is producing gas, and the skin will then expand because it's supple. It will expand with the gas, and it will bulge out, but it will still hold the wine. But what happens if you take a wineskin that's already been used before and you pour some new wine into it? It's already stretched and kind of become rigid and hard after stretching. And when you add that new wine to it, there's no more room for it to expand. And so the wineskin will burst during the fermentation process. And then the wine is gone and the skin is gone and everything is ruined. So what's the point, Jesus? What does this all mean? When God is doing something new, when something new is coming in, you need to have a new framework to receive it. You can't receive it with the old framework. You can't put a new wine in your old wineskin. This is only the second chapter of the Gospel of Mark. But already, Mark has gone to great lengths to show us that everything that Jesus is doing feels new and weird and different. In just 2 chapters, he's been healing sick people miraculously. He's been defeating evil powers. He's been accepting social outcasts among his disciples. He's been eating meals with known sinners. He's been pronouncing sins forgiven. And every time he does one of these, people have these reactions. They're astonished, the text says. They're amazed. It quotes them as saying, "What is this, a new teaching? We've never seen anything like this before. We've never heard anything like this. Why aren't you fasting, Jesus? It doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing these things?" And it's because everyone is trying to understand this new thing, but with this framework of old wineskins. They're not ready for it. Even Jesus' own disciples are constantly confused by what he's doing. How will we respond in our lives as we're entering a new season like this one, as we face the things we were sharing about? Exciting changes, unknowable changes, anxious things coming along. How can we enter into these seasons and receive them with new wine skins, like new wineskins, instead of old, rigid, resistant ones? That's what I want to talk about tonight. How to be like a fresh wineskin. All right, here's how to be a new wineskin. Be a learner. Old wineskins, rigid and unbending. We tend to be that way too. There's this thing called cognitive dissonance. All the psychology folks, you know more about this than I do. Every one of us has expectations and ways of thinking. We have a worldview. We have a collection of beliefs and values and perceptions. And these things are very important. They guide us. They keep us safe. Believing in gravity kept me away from the cliff at the edge of Waimea Canyon. I don't see anything there. I'm not pushing that cliff because I believe in gravity, right? Having perception of a sense of what's right and wrong helps us to make hard decisions in our lives. It guides us. For religious people, Having a religious worldview gives us hope and meaning, a sense of connection to God, an experience of God in our lives, and a community of fellow believers that we can connect with. Worldview is key. There's an inherent problem, though. It's wrong. Every one of you has one, and they're all wrong. Mine is wrong too. Each one of our worldviews is shaped by unique experiences, perceptions, things that have happened to us, our cultures, our family values, our religious traditions, with the result that none of us really have exactly the same worldview as anybody else. And so who's right? Maybe you're the one person who's right, and everyone else is wrong. Probably we're all wrong. We don't even understand or see our physical world correctly. Science does not know how gravity works. We don't know how to reconcile quantum physics with Einsteinian physics. We don't know, after all this, we know a lot more about the world than we used to. We still don't know how fundamental things work. Now I've heard mixed things about this, but essentially, each one of us is 99.99% air, or not air, like nothing. You guys know this? Like as far as the matter and what makes you up, you're 99.99% not there. Now, if you think of it out of just fields and all that, maybe that's not exactly. But that's not what we see when we look at each other. What you see when you look at me is not really me. What I see when I look in the mirror is not exactly what's true of me. Our worldview, it works, but it's not correct. We have these limitations, and we stick with them because we have this, we want them. So when things challenge them, that's when the cognitive dissonance hits, and we fight it, and we resist. A new idea, a new thought, a new way of seeing things. We resist it. Christians should be the first to admit that we have things wrong, that we have limitations. If we believe that God is greater than we can comprehend, if we believe that we're prone to sin and wrong thinking, we should be the most humble people in the world about what we believe and how we see the world, and if only that were true, right? Instead, often I feel like my fellow Christians, and even myself sometimes, we're some of the most resistant people when there's a new scientific discovery or a new philosophy or something. So immediately you see the Christians circle the wagons, right? It's that can't be true, and holding this ground. Instead of engaging with it and wondering, maybe we need to rethink things a little bit. New wineskins are ready to change and grow and become. We need the humility to recognize that we're not finished products, that we have so much left to learn. College is this amazing opportunity to be learners, to expose ourselves to different perspectives from peers and professors, to get this amazing research in science and history and sociology, to learn the art of inquiry and critical thinking, and then to apply those things not just to what everyone else thinks, but to ourselves and in what we believe and think. We shouldn't be afraid to do that, even to our faith. The amount of anguish I experienced in college, also in high school, also in grad school, especially in college, as my conceptions were challenged, when certain things would come in and hit my religious worldview in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I would just go to this place of, what does that mean for my faith, and is God real, and what's going on in my life, and can I believe, and I would sink into these sinkholes of despair. And then I would have to listen to all my Christian music for hours straight, lying there, God, give me faith again, right? Until I put myself back together again. What was I so worried about? What was I worried I was going to lose? My 100% correct beliefs about God and the world? I didn't have 100% correct beliefs. My beliefs needed to be challenged, and that wrestling was really good for me. Wrestling is hard work. Cognitive dissonance is not fun, but that's how we grow, by being challenged by new things and wrestling with them and letting them affect us and change us in ways, dealing with them. How do you want to enter this year as a learner, both from classes and from peers and spaces like this? Second thing we can do is embrace changing circumstances. New wine ferments and changes, so new wineskins have to adjust to change. But old wineskins already have a shape, and that shape was formed by the last fermentation. When Jesus came into the first century Mediterranean world, there was a very rigid social order, very rigid identities, hierarchies. Your family, your wealth, your gender, your age, your status as a slave, a free person, or a Roman citizen, these all affected you and slotted you into places of how people saw you and how you related to each other. Who gave you respect? What kind of privileges you had? Who you showed deference to? And it was very set in stone. When Jesus came along, he began subverting these hierarchies. He was a rabbi who ate with sinners. He was a connected person who welcomed in social outcasts. He was a man who interacted respectfully with women in public places, a male teacher who included women among his disciples. He criticized how leaders used their authority and insisted that the greatest were those who made themselves low and served others. He even at one point was invited to a dinner party and started critiquing out loud why people were taking the seats of honor. And he said, "Why are you guys doing this? You should take the seats of less honor," which was awkward. And he made people angry. People don't like it when their privileges are challenged. They don't like it when you challenge the social order. The Karens had a lot to say to Jesus. We're seeing this happen in real time right now. You know, I don't want to be like a downer. I don't, like it's so painful to think about what's happening in the country right now that I hate to even bring it up in like our first Friday fellowship meeting. But also when I was thinking about new seasons and like dealing with the new, I'm like, oh my gosh, every single day there's a new horror, right? Just the things that are happening in the country are genuinely deeply disturbing, not just in the US, but in many places around the world as well. People predicted this was going to happen. People have been talking for a long time that as the demographic trend in the United States would shift from white to people of color, and white people becoming more of a minority, and culture diversifying and also liberalizing in many ways, that there would be a backlash. And the backlash would be that the people who have power would fight to hang on to that power. I just didn't expect it to be so intense, so fast, so dramatic as we're seeing now. But we're literally seeing in our country what Jesus is talking about here. There's this new wine that's been coming in of change, and the old wineskin couldn't take it, and we're seeing the destruction in this moment. And no idea how this whole thing is going to play out eventually. When people feel the social order changing in ways that will cost them their privilege and power, they fight to defend it. And that is absolutely what's happening right now. There was a video that's been going viral of an ICE agent taking down a protest poster and a reporter asking the ICE agent about it. And the ICE agent replied, "We're taking back America," which is not what police officers normally say when they're enforcing the law, right? They say, "We're enforcing the law," not "We're taking back our country." Like, that is a political statement. That is a statement of people are taking something away and we're grabbing it back, right? Trying to get it back. It is hard to deal with change, especially if the change is costly to us in different ways. New wineskins embrace change. Whether that change is good, whether it's uncomfortable, and even when it's bad, new wineskins recognize this is the new reality. How will I deal with this reality? There's no hiding from it. There's no turning back the clock and trying to get back to some mythical, better time. We couldn't do it if we wanted to. Sometimes we feel like, I'm going to be too overwhelmed if I look at everything that's happening around me in the world right now. That is the point, right? That's why this stuff is happening so fast, is to make you too overwhelmed to pay attention to all of it. And it is too much for any one of us to take all the time. But will we seek to embrace and recognize what's happening, to learn what we need to learn, and then to move forward into it in a way that seeks justice and love and rightness and restoration, that looks ahead to what's the new reality we can get to after this, instead of how do we get back to something that came before it. Because we're going to need something new and better after to go towards. This isn't just about big political changes, though. It's about our own lives, how we respond to the changes in our immediate worlds. Some of us are going through more change than others, on the cusp of graduating or moving on into the next stage of life. I was joking, some of y'all PhD students, it feels like that's never going to happen. Maybe you're like in ABD for like the longest time or something, but it's going to happen, right? These changes come along, or other things change on us. Relationships change. and we're left lonely or frustrated, cut off in tension with other people. We're in a new living situation. We have to figure out how to manage it. Even if it's a good one, it can require some work. Am I right, new married couple? Right? It's like, hey, this is great. How are we going to do this again? It took a little figuring out. Dealing with a challenging course load, a dissertation, or a job. Will we engage it? Will we move into that space and embrace it, looking for how we need to change in the midst of it? I'm in my own season of uncertainty right now. I have been forever. This one job. Hannah's always like, wow, is this job still in that place? For literally over a year now, this part-time side hustle that I have, I work in remote IT for this charter airline. It's hard to explain. It still exists. Welcome back from abroad. Good to see you, Amanda. So that shows you how long I've been talking about how this thing on teetering on the brink of going away. I've been expected to be laid off for over a year now, and it's still going, but any day now it could happen. But in the meantime, my job has changed a whole bunch and gotten harder because a bunch of IT people were laid off. So now I'm doing IT stuff that I wasn't trained for. I'm deep into Microsoft administration. I'm like, I hope I don't break the whole company, but I gotta fix this, right? And in my head, I'm like, I am in a season of change. Either this job is gonna fall away, and I'll be partly very happy to see it go, but also I need to replace that income somehow. How will I do that? Or it's going to keep going and I need to learn how to be a Microsoft administrator. And I feel everything in me is like, I liked it better before, which is getting me nowhere. Or can I just get back to the way I was before this job started? Sure, I'll lose my job and then I'll go right back to exactly how I used to do things before I got this job. And my sense in this moment is I need to grow into the new thing that's in front of me, whatever that is. So be proactive, Chris. Think about, how can you grow as a Microsoft administrator? Or is it time to look for another job and be proactive in this moment? It's hard for me. I'm trying. Which brings me to the third and final thing I want to say. Well, I want to ask you, Ashley, what changes are happening in your life or in the world that require you to change in response? And what help do you need from God and others to do it? And that brings me to my last point. To make these changes, we need to establish new habits and ways. Like old wineskins, adapted to these previous experiences, we have habits that work for what we used to do. You all have habits for what got you here. Maybe in the past you stressed out and worked like a maniac and built your identity around academic achievement, and that was good enough to get you to the Claremont colleges and to be in this kind of space. It might not be the thing that you need to thrive here or to grow as a human being. Some of us managed our emotional wounds through drivenness and addictive behaviors and serial relationships. Are those the habits you need to thrive and grow and be the whole person that God wants you to become? These old habits, they're not the ones that are going to get us to where we need to be next, but they're ingrained in us. We're used to operating with them. Even good, godly habits sometimes need replacement to fit the new season we're in. Some things that worked for you in high school, some spiritual practice and other things, you might find they don't work very well in college. Don't have a crisis over it, the fact that you can't wake up early in the morning anymore or whatever it is. Maybe it's time for some new habits. One habit that we love for students that we're always talking about, and only some of you listen to, is this idea of taking a Sabbath day of rest every week. A day where you don't work. I know it sounds impossible, but think about it for a moment. How would it change your experience of college if one day out of every 7 while you're here, you just didn't touch a book? You just didn't do any work. And not only that you did not do it, but you knew in your head, I'm not allowed to think about it, so I can't even worry about it. I'm just turning that off for a day to spend with others, with God, with yourself. Time for personal reading a book you actually want to read, reflecting, doing edifying activities that grow you in some other way. What would the emotional benefits be of having a no stress allowed day? A regular experience of seeing that your worth that day, your worth as a human being, has nothing to do with what you produce. How might that contribute to your personal growth over your time in undergrad or grad school? How would it affect you if you develop that habit now and carry it on into your life going forward? Now, it doesn't have to be a 24-hour period. You can do a half day if you want. You can work up to it. Or you can do what I did in college, where I would go Saturday after Saturday after lunch to Sunday after lunch. Like I'd work Sunday afternoon and evening, but I had that whole experience of like going to bed, no homework on my mind, that kind of thing. Whatever works for you. There are other habits too that could help you grow here. Making time for reflection, prayer, going to bed at a decent hour, a weekly meal scheduled with supportive friends. Maybe making a commitment to be at every Friday fellowship, or to be at every meeting of a community group, someplace where you know you're going to think about things and be fed in some way. My big commitment this year, this academic year, is I'm leading a cohort in this program called the Faith and Justice. I'm leading a cohort with some of our alumni. So Jake is in that program, Anna from Scripps, David from a couple of years ago at CMC. It's a fun crew, and we're going to be reading through these books about faith and justice. And I'm like, I need to be reading these kinds of things with other people to help me think about how to engage the world in this time. The book I'm looking forward to most is so appropriate to me for what I need right now. The book is called Hope After Doom. I'm marking my calendar for reading that book. Okay, so I've covered a lot of ground tonight. The main question throughout, though, has been the same. What kinds of changes are you facing in this new season? And how do you need to be like a new wineskin to receive and engage those changes? What kind of changes are you facing? And how do you need to be like a new wineskin to receive and engage in those changes? Take a moment and let's just reflect. Close your eyes, or if closing your eyes will make you fall asleep, don't close your eyes. Just think for yourself. Are there ways that you need to be open to learning and challenging your thinking? Are there ways that you need to engage with hard changing circumstances, to be bold and faithful and courageous and step into them? Are there ways that you need to learn new habits to make sure that this semester doesn't look like the last one, or to grow in some way you know you need to grow? Think about that for a moment. Lord, I pray that you would be helping each of us to be like new wineskins, open and receptive to the new wine that you want to give us, to the change, the growth that you want to give us. Help us to be flexible enough and bold enough to deal with the changes that we don't choose, that are coming at us in this season. God, work your changes in us so that we become more whole and healthy, that we become people who can stand up and do what is right and do what is good in the world. Help us to love where it's hard to love. God, we bring these things before you. Ask for your help with them. In Jesus' name, amen. What I'd like you to do right now, I know some of this might be really personal for you, so you can share to the degree that you are comfortable, but I'd like you to go back with the people you were sharing before and share some of what you were thinking about in response to these questions. And then I'll come back in a couple of minutes and we'll close with a song of worship.